Were in some respects in serious disharmony with more developed conceptions in other parts of the book. A complete consistency, either within the compass of the Silmarillion itself or between the Silmarillion and other published writings of my father's, is not to be looked for, and could only be achieved, if at all, at heavy and needless cost. Moreover, my father came to conceive the Silmarillion as a compilation, a compendious narrative made long afterwards from sources of great diversity, poems and annals and oral tales that had survived in age-long tradition. And this conception has indeed its parallel in the actual history of the book, for a great deal of earlier prose and poetry does underlie it, and it is to some extent a compendium in fact, and not only in theory. To this may be ascribed the varying speed of the narrative and fullness of detail in different parts, the contrast, for example, of the precise recollections of place and motive in the legend of Turin Turambar, beside the high and remote account at the end of the First Age when Thangorodrim was broken and Morgoth overthrown, and also some differences of tone and portrayal, some obscurities, and here and there some lack of cohesion. In the case of the Valaquenta, for instance, we have to assume that while it contains much that must go back to the earliest days of the Eldar in Valinor, it was remodelled in later times, and thus explain its continual shifting of tense and viewpoint, so that the divine powers seem now present and active in the world, now remote, a vanished order, known only to memory. The book, though entitled as it must be, The Silmarillion, contains not only the Quenta Silmarillion, or Silmarillion proper, but also 4 other short works. The Ainulindalë and Valaquenta, which are given at the beginning, are indeed closely associated with the Silmarillion, but the Akallabêth and Of the Rings of Power, which appear at the end, are, it must be emphasized, wholly separate and independent. They are included according to my father's explicit intention, and by their inclusion, the entire history is set forth from the music of the Ainur, in which the world began, to the passing of the ring-bearers from the havens of Mithlond at the end of the Third Age. The number of names that occur in the book is very large, and I have provided a full index. But the number of persons, elves and men, who play an important part in the narrative of the First Age is very much smaller, and all of these will be found in the genealogical tables. In addition, I have provided a table setting out the rather complex naming of the different Elvish peoples, a note on the pronunciation of Elvish names, and a list of some of the chief elements found in these names, and a map. It may be noted that the great mountain range in the east, Ered Luin, or Ered Lindon, the Blue Mountains, appears in the extreme west of the map in The Lord of the Rings. In the body of the book, there is a smaller map. The intention of this is to make clear at a glance where lay the kingdoms of the elves after the return of the Noldor to Middle-earth. I have not burdened the book further with any sort of commentary or annotation. In the difficult and doubtful task of preparing the text of the book, I was very greatly assisted by Guy Kay, who worked with me in 1974 to 1975. Christopher Tolkien, 1977. Preface to the second edition. Probably towards the end of 1951, when The Lord of the Rings was completed, but difficulties lay in the way of its publication, my father wrote a very long letter to his friend Milton Waldman, at that time an editor at the publishing house of Collins. The context and occasion of this letter lay in the painful differences that arose over my father's insistence that the Silmarillion and the Lord of the Rings should be published in conjunction or in connection.